As we mentioned before, fractions are just a tricky part of math. So in the discussion board, one of your options was to answer this question: are these two equations equivalent? So the answer is yes, they are equivalent. So you can either write an equation as 1/3 x, or you can multiply the 1 and the x together, so this is technically like a 1x over 3. The reason you can do that is if I had 1/3 being multiplied by x, x has an invisible 1 underneath it, so when you multiply these together, you get x over 3, which is what's happening here. So if you prefer to look at an equation this way or this way, they mean the exact same thing. The next thing that you could have looked at in the discussion board was how to solve a fraction equation. So there are a few different ways you could approach this. So one way you could approach it, I'll write it out over here, is I could first try to get rid of the 5. So I know this is like a divided by 5. So to get rid of it, I could do multiplied by 5. So 5 divided by 5 is 1. And multiply by 5 on this side. So we've got 4x equals 15. And then we could divide by 4 on both sides. So our final answer would be x equals 15 divided by 4. So that's one way you could approach it. Another way you could approach it is you could multiply by the reciprocal. So what that would look like, if reciprocal is an unfamiliar word, remember reciprocal means you're flipping the fraction. So if I've got 4/5, I would multiply that by its reciprocal, which would be 5 over 4. And I would do the same thing on the other side. So 5 divided by 5 is 1, 4 divided by 4 is 1, so we're just left with an x on the left side. And on this side, this is like 3 over 1 times 5 over 4, so 3 times 5 is 15, 1 times 4 is 4. So those are two different ways you could approach this problem. So let's check out a few different examples. So I see 2/3 m equals 4. So the last way I didn't show you is you could actually use a calculator, and on some calculators with the fraction buttons you can divide by a fraction. So if you wanted to, you could do divided by 2/3 divided by 2/3 in your calculator, and that's another way you could do it. It doesn't work as nicely with mental math, but with calculators it's doable. So personally I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal because it's a little bit faster. So 3 divided by 3 is 1, 2 divided by 2 is 1, so I'm left with m. And if I multiply by 3 over 2 on the other side, 4 times 3 is 12, and 1 times 2 is 2. And then I can simplify this, so 12 divided by 2 equals 6. So I'm left with m equals 6. So in the second problem, the fraction is not attached to the variable, but we still have a fraction going on. So if I try to divide by 7, doing this fraction divided by 7 would confuse me. So instead, I'm going to actually multiply by this reciprocal. So this is 7 over 1. So I could multiply by 1 over 7, and then 7 and 7 divided by 7 is 1, 1 divided by 1 is 1, so I'm left with a y. And the reason I did that is because of the fraction on the right side. So if I multiply by 1 over 7, 7 divided by 7 is 1. So I'm left with a 1 on the top and a 2 on the bottom. So I'm left with negative 1 over 2. The last one we've got over here. So you could do this a few different ways. So if you want to use the calculator I introduced in the first week, you could use that calculator and its fractions to solve this pretty quickly. Or you could try to get common denominators. So I see a 4 and a 3 on denominators, and I'm going to put a 1 here. So personally, 4 and 3, those go into 12, so I'm going to try to make all of my fractions have a denominator of 12. So I'm going to multiply here by 4, multiply here by 12, and multiply here by 3. So I'm left with 3 over 12x equals 20, oh, just kidding, not equals, plus 24 over 12 equals 8 over 12. So now that we have common denominators, they will work more easily together. So I can subtract the 24 over 12 from both sides. So on the left, I still have 3 over 12x equals 8 minus 24 is negative 16. And then to get rid of the 3 over 12, I can multiply by the reciprocal. So 12 divided by 12 is 1, 3 divided by 3 is 1, so I'm left with x equals, if I simplify this side, 12 divided by 12 is 1, and 3 does not go into 16, so I'm left with negative 16 over 3. So if you were to use that desmos.com/scientific, it can do calculators, so it would probably be a faster method of solving a problem like that. So why don't you guys go try some practice problems and see what you can do.